While driving around doing errands, I ran across this scene. If you own a sailboat, please don't do this. Please don't put your sails up while your boat is on pop stands. Paint in hand, it was time to prep the bottom. Luckily for me, Lou did most of this work. And while that was going on, Kelly was doing some waxing. The 1 quart I bought was nowhere near enough to do the boat. Basically, we had enough to cut in around the top edge. There was tape there, which is gone when you see this. But we were able to do 1/2 of the rudder as well. Not the whole rudder, just a half of it. And this area here, just because. My wife and I returned with another gallon of paint and were able to finish the job. Lou offered to make replacement hatches for over the batteries and the water tank.
First thing I'm going to do is clamp this to the piece of wood here.
What is it?
That's a great question. What I'm going to get a copy of.
They go under the seats. There's storage under the seats, and these are like the tops.
Now that it's clamped, I'm going to trace it. It's a bit hard because this wood is fairly chipped.
That's why we're making new ones.
And falling apart.
You mean you wouldn't want to sit on it?
Now that I know what I need to cut out, set up jigs accordingly and make the cuts.
What do you mean by set up jigs accordingly? I don't know what that means.
So the saw here has 1¼ inches outside there. So if I want to make this cut, I want to clamp this down 1¼ inches back from the cut I want to make so that it can be a guide for the saw.
Awesome.
Work in this area. I cleaned out most of the horrible grime, but there's still lots of grime left to take care of. But I noticed there were screws for this switch to mount it at a different position, which makes more sense. So it's parallel to the input tube, or whatever you call that thing, the inlet. As long as we can get these wires under control, I think it's a much better position. It brings the switch down a little bit lower into the pan. The pan tips that way. Water will run that way. And it keeps it away from this thing, because before, if you remember, it was using that screw hole in that one, and the front of this edge was catching under here and under the wires. So we're going to try it in this position and see if it works any better. I just wired it up temporarily to see if the switch works, and it does. So I'm going to try to reuse the old switch for now, because we're going to be changing these switches in the future. These wire nuts, though, they have to go. We have to do proper connections in these places. I'm in a very large room, Actually, I'm just playing with the buttons. So I solved one of the riddles of the bilge pump wiring. Some of the existing bilge pump wiring that I thought should have been a hot lead directly from the battery, not through the switch, for the float switch to go to the bilge pump, which is a normal thing to do because when you turn your power off to leave the boat for the weekend, for the week to go home, you don't want your bilge pump turned off. You want it to go on when it's needed. So usually there's a hot lead taken off the battery to the float switch, which then connects to the regular positive on the pump. So that was all there, but it wasn't working, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't want to rip up the floor just to run a new wire or figure out what was wrong with the existing wire. So I was kind of holding back, and I'm glad I did, because sitting on the floor next to the battery compartment wondering why on earth this wasn't working, I noticed that there was a little a fuse holder right next to the battery on a red wire coming off of battery number 1. So I looked in the fuse holder, and of course the fuse was there, and it was fine. I tested the fuse, so I figured that's not it. Then I realized by tracing the wire that it was actually going up to where the radio is. So that was probably for the radio memory. So I looked a little harder, and I found another line coming off the battery that kind of went down underneath the battery, and I got the wire out from under the battery box, and lo and behold, there was a fuse holder there with no fuse in it, and it was a bit corroded. So for a test, I had a fuse that size. It was like a car fuse. I jammed it in, and the wiring all worked. So yay. So for this season, I'm probably going to use some of the existing wiring that I planned on replacing. But that project really just did not fall into place with the people that were trying to help me with it, and our timing not working out. So I'm going to go with this old wiring, but with new connectors on everything, for at least for the start of this season. So I didn't film any of that, unfortunately, to show you, but I will maybe take some pictures and show you next time. So at least I'm glad that's moving forward. This coming Monday is our launch date. I'm filming this on a Thursday. The yard was supposed to take care of the cutlass bearing this week so it could launch. So when I go down there Saturday morning, I hope to find the cutlass bearing has been changed, and we can go on with the launch on Monday, because over the weekend I will touch up the paint where they were working on the bearing, and I will finish that pump wiring now that I know where everything has to happen, and I'm going to get all the waxing done that I can on the above the waterline portion of the hull, and I have to buy the new batteries. Been waiting a long time for the new batteries. So that's it for this update. Hopefully something interesting to show you next week, and I'll be better about filming it. So please subscribe if you haven't. If you want to see more videos, leave a comment, please. I'd love to see a comment. Hopefully positive comments, but hey, I'll take what I can get. And thank you for watching, and enjoy your spring.